Are you serious? Are you serious? Folks, we have to really pray. The Bible said in the last days there would be these pestilences or plagues, diseases. Jesus was asked the question when he was sitting on the Mount of Olives. If the disciples said, Lord, can you tell us the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? And Jesus said, there shall be false Christ and false prophets shall rise, and they shall deceive many. And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. But see thou be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. The end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in diverse places. Pestilences, plagues, diseases. Well, in Yemen, there's a cholera outbreak of a biblical proportion. Now, over 100,000 people that are deathly ill with cholera, and they're expecting this to rise to 300,000. Matter of fact, between May 27th and June 8th, the number of cases of cholera, according to the World Health Organization, rose from 23,500 to over 100,000 in just 12 days. This is of a biblical proportion. Let me tell you what's going on. Back on June 8th, that's June 8th. This is the 15th? 15th of June? What? How many more cases? Listen to this report. According to the World Blood Donor Day by the World Health Organization, of course, the World Health Organization reported the number of suspected cholera cases in Yemen continues to rise, reaching 101,820 cases. Matter of fact, 791 people have died. Folks, this is worse than Ebola. These numbers are going to go past Ebola from 2 years ago. It's the worst effect are the country's most vulnerable. The children, of course, the children under the age of 15 years of age account for 46% of the cases, and those aged over 60 years represent 33% of the fatalities. And the World Health Organization and the United Nations Children Fund, or UNICEF, are honing in on the areas reporting the highest number of cases to try to stop the disease from spreading any further. These cholera hotspots are the source of much of the country's cholera transmissions, according to Dr. Zagarera, the head of the World Health Organization's office in Yemen. Stamp out cholera in these places, and we can slow the spread of the disease and save lives. At the same time, we're continuing, he said, to support early and proper treatment for the sick and conducting prevention activities across the country. Now, the race to contain this plague, this outbreak of cholera, will not be won easily. The country's health system has been nearly destroyed by more than 2 years of intense conflict. This is what happens. That's why Jesus said, well, there's going to be false Christ and false prophets will rise. So in other words, religious lies will create chaos, which will bring forth, then you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars, and nations rise against nation, and even spiritual kingdoms against kingdoms. And there will be then from that famine. People aren't planting crops and running farms and processing food when you're trying to survive bombs. So there will be famines, and then there will be pestilences or diseases that will break out. Now, let me just tell you something. About 2 years ago, of course, I got very ill, deathly ill, really, from hepatitis that took me about 7 months to get completely out of my body, and that was hepatitis A. We're not talking hepatitis C. I got very ill, as you all know, and I thank you for your prayers. But 20 years ago, I traveled to India, where I then got a touch of cholera. I was preaching a crusade there. I was there for 11 days. I preached not only a 3-day crusade where thousands of people came and were saved, but then I went into the jungles and preached in these jungle villages to 400 and 500 people per spot, and people were saved everywhere. So it was amazing. People were healed. It was an amazing opportunity. But I was warned by the man in charge, Dr. Solomon Rout. He said to me, whatever you do, Pastor, do not drink the water. And I went to this one village, and there were 8 fresh graves. There of 8 people who had died there from some kind of disease the week before I got there. I preached there, and people were saved. But it was like 103 degrees. We're in the middle of the jungle. We had no bottled water at this point. We were 20 miles back till we got back to the camp, riding a Jeep through the jungle. And I was very thirsty. And a young little boy brought me a cup. It was a metal cup, a little half cup of cold water from a branch that was flowing, a spring flowing off the mountainside. And I said to myself, this has got to be okay. So I drank the water. Now, by the time I got back to the main compound where the orphanage was, where I was staying, I was so sick. I had gotten so ill that my fever was so high that I couldn't even open my eyes. I was so sick. They laid me on a cot, and Dr. Solomon Rout came into the hut, and he looked at me and said, Pastor, and I said, yes, sir. He said, you drank the water, didn't you? I said, yes, sir, I did. He goes, I told you, don't drink the water, preacher. You see, we should listen, okay? We should listen when we're out there. Well, he said, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to send a man into your room who's going to pray for you, and God's going to heal you. And you're going to get up and you're going to preach tonight, because he said there's 2,000 people out there waiting for this evening service. They're coming from everywhere to hear you preach, and you're not going to lay here on this cot. And that's what I'm going to do. And he left the room. He didn't pray for me. He left the room. So I laid there thinking, oh, my Lord. Well, a few minutes later, the custodian of the orphanage, a man that I had seen cleaning and working all around the place, he had never been introduced to me. They had introduced me to all kinds of pastors, 40, 50 pastors, preachers, all kinds of bishops, different people, from different areas around. Even met a Hindu a guy who was once a Hindu guru who had come to Christ. And so this man walks in and he says, I'm here to pray for you. And he lays his hands on me and he begins to pray. And when he laid his hands on me, his hands felt like ice cubes. And as he prayed, I could feel the fever going down. And he would pray and he touched my face and he would pray and he moved. And this went on for about 30 minutes as he prayed to the Lord. I could feel the heat leaving my body. The further he prayed, he pushed it down all the way to my feet. And they were like they were on fire, but the rest of me was cool. And when he finished with my feet, the fever was gone. It was unbelievable. He said to me, lay there and rest another half hour, drink some water, you'll be ready to preach. And he left the room. Folks, I got up. I was unbelievably healed. And I went out and preached that night to thousands, and hundreds were saved. But I can tell you, when I got back home, I started to feel a little bit of a fever again. I went quickly to see the doctor to find out what was wrong. And he said, you've got a touch of cholera, but you're going to be all right. I'm going to tell you something. This is what's happening to these people. This is a horrific sickness that's come upon them. They really need our prayers. Pray for the people of Yemen. This is a horrific plague that has come upon that land due to the wars, the famines, the conflict, the Houthi rebels who are destroying Yemen. Yemen's government has been overthrown twice since President Obama's Arab Spring. And so this is a country in crisis. The Iranians are funding the Houthis. And so there's violence in the land. Matter of fact, the Houthis just earlier today fired a missile and hit a ship owned by the United Arab Emirates. And I think one person was killed. I'm not sure. I got to find out more about it. But the ship was definitely hit by a missile by the Houthi rebels that were off the coast of Yemen. It was a ship of the United Arab Emirates. So it's out of control out there. Cholera spreading like crazy. Sickness and disease. These are the plagues. These are the signs of the end times. A plague of biblical proportion coming upon the earth. And that's why we in these last days have to put our faith in Jesus Christ. There was no hope for me in India. There was really no doctors. The closest doctor was like 200 miles away. I mean, this guy's got to come in and lay hands on me and pray for me. I got to get healed or I'm going to be in a lot of trouble here. And I think that in these last days, the church has got to have faith in God. And that's why we send out prayer cloths to agree with you in prayer. That's why we send blankets to the people who are sick. We send blankets and prayer cloths and chemo caps and Bibles to people all over the world. We pray over them. We believe God for your healing. This is biblical, scriptural. And people are being healed and touched and saved. And so we're not going to back down just because a little persecution comes here and there, or because somebody doesn't agree with it. We're going to get the job done. This is the last days. This end time church will be stronger and more powerful than the early church. We have to be, because the beast is rising and it's getting intense. These are the beginning of sorrows. Are you saved? Are you on fire for God? Don't miss today's live broadcast. We're going to uncover the deep state with Sheila Zelinsky. The New World Order. Christ is coming soon. Give your life to Jesus Christ. Pray for the people of Yemen. Pray for the people of Yemen.